Hello and good evening. For those of you that are new or have not seen the first video, which I assume is going to be most of you, my name is Mark. We are working on a painting with the reference image you have there in the top left corner. I'm going to be going through, telling you step by step, telling you exactly how I'm doing it, what I'm doing, and why I'm doing it. This is part two. The first video is out where I created the painting that we see in front of you here, and I'm happy to please go check that out. Take a look at it. I'm happy for you to go view it and see where we kind of started off. In the meantime, let me get started diving in with kind of the plan for today. And what I really want to do today is highlight and work on this section of the image here, where we have this declining area on this side and the same kind of shape on that side. It's behind these trees, but it's very similar. Last time there was a big, I focused mostly on having a lot of vertical strokes. I'm really trying to pull things downwards so the eye was drawn down, kind of in this kind of V-shaped pattern you see here in the center. The goal for today is really to do the opposite of that and really to expand upon these more horizontal forms that you see striations across that, which again are kind of going to be pointing toward the center V, but now we're going to be doing off the side. So I'm basically going to be working along these lines here and here to fill in these kind of striations here. I'm going to be doing it mostly with sap green, as well as I believe this is cadmium yellow. So I'm using mostly those two colors, again, mostly with strokes that are going to be very horizontal. And I'm going to kind of build them through and across. I'll probably also use some Van Dyke brown from down here to form these branches in very thin kind of strokes. So last time we used a lot of the Memaleo brushes, which you can kind of see here in this corner. And those brushes have this kind of really thick texture to them, so I'll probably use them again. You may also begin to see me mixing in more of these flatter brush tones, which will help us to make some of these more straight images and help us put some paint down before we begin to use the more textured approach, especially as we get into these kind of really skinny elements that are in the background here of these really skinny trees. And I'll probably begin to cover some of those today as well. So diving in and getting painting, let me recenter this a little bit so that this is back to where it's good. All right, so now back into Krita. So again, I am using Krita 4, which is a free software. The brushes I showed you are also all free. The brush creator from Memaleo does suggest a $5 donation for him. His brushes are worth well more than $5. So please, if you are interested and you use Krita, please go ahead and give him a nice, lovely donation. I definitely bought him a couple cups of coffee when I bought this. So, well, probably one cup of coffee, given how expensive things are now. So let me start with this flat Memaleo brush. I'm going to start with Van Dyke brown, rather a shade of Van Dyke brown. And what I'm going to be doing is just putting in some nice and light lines throughout this area here. And I'm probably going to start right down here. So again, one of the beautiful parts of painting is that there are no right or wrong answers. And that this really is a matter of just letting your hand kind of paint where it thinks it is. And I'm just putting in these here. Again, my plan is to go through and also to simply blend these as we go. And I'm just putting in lines or shapes here that I think are approximately where I want them. I'm not worried about exact placement right now. I'm not worried about exact direction. All I am doing is focusing on the actual pressure I'm using, as well as the overall shape of these, and that they have various starting points and various positions. Because again, I'm going to blend these in a moment, and I'm trying to not really pay too much attention here. I'm just kind of trying to do, and just trying to have some various upwards. You can see as I'm kind of varying pressure, it almost seems like they're going from different spots in the canopy. And so almost as if some are further away than others. And again, all I'm really doing is just going in very lightly and varying the pressure I'm using on the brush. Now, I'm going to go back in with my flow blender. And I'm going to go in the opposite direction now. And I'm going to begin to just work these a little bit in the kind of horizontal way. Let me also zoom in so I can get a closer look at these. And just begin to kind of really work them in so that they are much flatter in tone. I also have made a boo-boo already, and then I'm doing this all in the same layer, but that's okay. Mistakes are okay. It is okay to make mistakes. I am going to increase the brush size on the blender brush because the smaller the brush, the lower the texture, and I want this to still have texture. If I make the brush size too small, it'll really flatten these out. And I'm just kind of trying to have these horizontal strokes go through and really make these brown streaks much lighter in appearance than they are now. And by doing so, what I'm also doing is introducing these other horizontal striations, which are going to really make this to seem like branches that are poking out. And again, I'm just kind of lightly going through and doing these again. But again, my goal was not to make a one-to-one image of the reference image that you see on the top there. My goal was really to make this be something that has the correct feel that I'm looking for. And as a result, I kind of want this to have a much more, again, the goal is to point the eye toward the center. That's really what I'm trying to do here. And I'm just moving back and forth with that to kind of pull out the idea of these brown tree branches. I will also let me go in and begin to make these or work these same areas with the sap green and the alizarin and the cad yellow. Again, just kind of working those shapes. I'll also likely begin to mix in some of those more circular motions that we used last time as well, just to kind of blur out the starkness of some of these shapes and forms. I don't really want that to be that stark. I kind of really do want it to feel like a branch. And a branch will, with its leaves, will naturally be very fluffy rather than being kind of stark. And so I really am trying to create these the directionality really is the important thing, and kind of maintaining that directionality as I work through is really what I'm going for. And again, I'm going to begin putting in more paint here to kind of add layers on top of this to really affect that. And in the end, most of what we're seeing here is going to get blurred behind the foreground of the large tree you see on the right-hand side of the image. And I really do want to emphasize that portion of it. And I also want to make the area of that V pattern much lighter. Much lighter in tone. That's one of the reasons why I really want to use that yellow to really point it out and really draw the line for it so that it really begins to become something that is very magnetic to the eye, where the eye almost can't look off it. And again, the beauty of these Memaleo brushes is really that I can almost feel the paint moving, even though it is very, it is digital, so it isn't real. But I can still feel it and see it move as if it were. Again, now I'm just trying to blend in more of those different stroke colors. And the more I blend it, the more the brown and the green mix together and become one thing. And as I pull the sky, this more bluer shade in, you can see even that begins to really change the appearance of it and spread out that lighter area. And then as I go ahead and use more circular motions, it really deadens the brown streak that I put in. And all I'm trying to do is give indications and the thought that maybe there is something back here that is the color of the Van Dyke brown. I'm not even really trying to show anything in individual or even an individual tree, let alone an individual branch. And I'm really just trying to let your eye guess and let your eye think that it sees something there. And the more that I blend that color back in, and the more that color gets mixed in with that more darker green shade, the more the eye thinks, hey, wait a minute, and begins to consider, maybe there is something there. Maybe this is something that is, maybe it is a tree. And when you look at something far away, even in real life, your eye doesn't necessarily see that it is something that is, if you look at a tree that's, a mile away, you can't really tell necessarily it's a tree. But your eye and your brain work together to kind of sort it out and figure out based on your experiences with seeing things close up and saying, okay, well, that looks like it's the shape of a tree. I've seen that before. Therefore, even though I can't really see what it is, I'm going to deduce it's a tree. And it does all that in the background without actually even thinking about it. It does all that in a fraction of a second, so that you, on a conscious level, are able to interpret what the actual object is without needing to think about it. Because what if that object was, you're a caveman? What if that object is a predator? And having that ability to have a snap judgment is really what's going to set apart, you from the guy next to you that gets eaten. Always, if you ever are out hiking in the wilderness, always make sure you're going with someone who is slower than you, because that will always ensure that you are safe. Because if anything, the bear is going to catch up to them. Again, just trying to blend and mixing these colors a little more so that this lighter tone is a little more apparent. And I'm not really worried or even really caring about the overall composition. All I'm trying to do is really just maintain this V-shaped pattern as I pull this white color deeper and deeper into the painting and deeper down. One thing I noticed that, let me go ahead and unlock these two layers. This will allow me to even further drag and mix in these different layers together so that we have some lighter tones here in the middle. One thing I noticed when I was looking for the stream is that it was a bit darker in tone toward the middle than I thought, and one of the reasons for this, I'm working here. I'm working in a very zoomed in way. But if I zoom out, I've kind of forgotten that the image, I've kind of expected the image is this, when it's not. The image is this. So I do really want to work this down further to augment some of the color here and really make it this more open and available to this kind of light sky shade on top, and begin to mix that through. And it may also begin to add in some of those more blue shades directly to get this to fit better. And again, this is not something that I want to be crystal clear to the eye. I want the eye to be making guesses. I want your eye to be triggering that, is this a predator feature that your brain has, to really clue into whatever this is. And the real goal too is to make it evocative, so that if you've experienced something that is breathtaking, maybe you've been on a hike, maybe you've seen a powerful vista, something like this is really meant to help you to just change the layers there. So I can begin to work on this a little bit and really begin to try to work out some of these colors here to make them more bright and apparent and more holistic of the image as a whole. And again, all I'm doing is pulling down. I'm not worried about how it looks now. I'm not worried about how it's going to look at the end. I'm just letting my hand work and letting my eye coordinate it. And I'm just thinking about, how the tones look together, how the colors look and work together, and how this overall shape actually appears. And then from there, I'm going to simply be going through and looking at this in terms of, how does it compare to the image that I want or the composition that I want. And the main composition that I want is this V shape in the middle. I think for now, we're doing a very good job with that. And so I like that. Again, working down a little further, just working this V shape more apparently into the image so that we can maybe kind of getting in more of those circular motions again to kind of really blend down these brighter colors, and then to really begin to maybe even switch to the sky and then begin to really work this through so that these colors are able to play with each other a little more. There we go. That's what I want. And now I'm almost kind of letting it become even more muddy and even more unclear as to where the individual colors begin, as to where the individual layers begin. And I'm really trying to let your eye determine where they begin or where they end so that there isn't really a definitive point at which you can say, okay, yes, that's where the sky ends, that's where the mountain begins. Because if you look in the reference image, if you look really right in this area here, you really can't see, and I'm pointing at the ridge here, and I'm really pointing at this. You really can't tell where that is. If anything, where I've chosen to put it in my image, in my painting, is a little bit high. That's fine, because in the end, this is not a one-to-one painting. This is something where, as an artist, we have to be comfortable with the choices that we make and comfortable with the overall feeling of the image that we're creating. And I'm really beginning to like just the overall shapes here and the overall images of this. It doesn't even have to be something where it's one-to-one, or it's even like in the end, compositionally, the only thing I care about is that I'm capturing that bright spot in the middle and that V shape and that verticality. Those are the only things that I really care about. Okay, just blending away, trying to make this a little bit lighter. And to really let this V shape shine through. And I do like working in a more zoomed out way. I find that preferable because, again, I find that when I zoom in, I tend to think about composition without even really realizing it in a way that is very defined. So like I'm working on, instead of working on one composition, I end up working on several different compositions, which is not really what I want. Something else I'm going to try to get rid of here is that kind of straight line that goes down there. And this kind of straight line here, I want to get rid of that. And now, you may have noticed that without me even realizing it, I have switched my brush strokes. And I've gone from that more circular motion, like this, to now I'm beginning to scoop the paint up. And I'm doing that instinctively because I'm trying to mimic the direction of a tree branch. And now you can see I'm kind of going in the opposite way. And I'm scooping it down, scooping it up, and scooping it down. Again, up and down. And really what I'm doing by having those different motions is I'm further blending in those colors. And I'm further blending in the little line that's between the two. And I'm scooping down. And I'm scooping up. Down. And up. Okay, cool. So now, I'm going to do something similar on this side, and I'm just going to begin to kind of scoop these in here. And I'm just going to begin to do this kind of same motion. I'm going to start roughly here. I'm just going to scoop these up and down. And scooping these up. And here my strokes are much more horizontal than the other side, and that's kind of what I want. And I'm scooping down. Now see here, without even realizing it, I have inadvertently made the shape of a pine tree. You can kind of see it there. It's very blurry, it's off in the distance, but I've kind of gently indicated that there is a pointy tree-like shape. And that's all that I want. And now as I say that, I'm probably going to go through and erase some of that a little bit as I kind of work through and mix in more of this light color. And then kind of circular in the middle here, kind of on these long horizontal streaks to kind of really give that kind of blurred feeling in the middle. And now I kind of also have this vertical feeling right here, which is probably a bit too much, right? Because now we can see a very linear element. And that's not really what we're looking for. So again, I'm kind of just going to scoop in this direction here. And then back the opposite direction. Maybe go a little bit differently again. And there. So now you can kind of see I've done it again. I'm zoomed in again, and I'm forgetting entirely that the bottom here exists. In this case, that's kind of okay, because the bottom really just has to have a little bit of weight to it, and paint on it, because it's really going to be overlaid with the shapes you're seeing here. So the kind of vertical, so as of right now, you can't really tell you're standing on the hill. It looks very much like this is a path that goes straight, and you're kind of it very much looks like it's going to be going uphill. And the drop off that really exists here won't really be formed until I put in the foreground, where I put a little hump in here, and that shape there, as well as having the trees come from the bottom of the painting up, will define that drop off. And by having this gap there, I'm also, as we kind of go, in fact, I'll do that now actually, or we'll go ahead and add a layer in. I'm just going to call this something very simple. I'm just going to call it midground 2. And all I'm going to do is go through and actually begin to paint in the various different very thin branches you're seeing here. I have the image up on my monitor on this side, so if you see me glancing to my right, I'm actually looking at the image to see what it actually looks like. And now that we have that set up, what I'm going to do is take my sap green, I'm going to take my wavy rigid brush, I'm going to keep it very small, and I'm going to start, and I'm just going to start roughly here, so very low in the image. I'm going to lock all the other layers so that they can't mix in, and I'm going to start right here. The fact that it has this kind of very, I'm probably go a little bigger than that on the brush size, the fact that it has this kind of very radioactive green color is okay. This is only the base. This is only the base color we're going to have here, and our goal here is just to have a little bit of texture, kind of walking in like this. I'm just kind of moving back and forth in this kind of similar pattern, like so. I'm doing the same on the other side. And just beginning to go ahead and follow some of the indications that I've already given. Right, so this kind of is aligned here, so I'm just going to follow that and get an indication that yeah, that is actually a thing. That's, that's going to be a branch of some kind. So we're going to go here as well. Cool. Now the next thing I'm going to do is if it was radioactive at first with a neon green, I'm about to kick that up a notch with this much more bright yellow. I'm just gonna use this a little more sparingly and use this yellowish color to fill in some of the voids here. Not all, just some. This is kind of what Bob Ross would call a decision moment. And right now, without even really realizing it, I am making major decisions about, see, I did it again. So we're back in, we're going to kind of focus on this a little more, put some more of these indications in, and just kind of work these through. And I'm going to kind of stick to these other forms almost as I'm going through. Not as much on that side, but I want it to exist. So there, and we're back to here. That's color I was using, but it doesn't matter. Again, I'm just trying to fill in some of these voids. I might even kind of go like that to fill in that area and begin to give some texture to what we've already begun to do. And again, thanks to the Maleo brushes, a lot of that texture is coming with us already. Just because of the way the brushes are shaped when they work. So that by having this kind of approach, it's naturally creating these kind of scrapey like shapes to where I'm able to really give this kind of defined details. So now I'm going to go in with some of this color here, which I believe is a burnt sienna. And again, I'm just kind of applying a little bit of pressure as I go through here. And begin to work this through. And really just adding texture. That's all I care about right now. Texture. And maybe creating some obvious indications where, this line that I've kind of created for myself here is really where the light stops and where the shadow begins. And so I'm kind of trying to also follow some of the shapes that are existing back in here to give some more form to that as well. I'm kind of using this more orangey color as a contrast to the darker, to the brighter green, to really kind of, and I'm also trying to follow some of the striations that the Memaleo brush created for me, because now I have something to kind of think about and play with as I'm going through this. And I'm really just beginning to add in a little bit of color and a little bit of texture to this as I'm working through it. And here I can't really use as much, so I'm kind of out of room. And I'm also trying to not apply too much pressure. You can see here that it got much brighter and orange because I really pushed down the pen. My hand kind of slipped a little bit and I applied too much. Now, it'd be very easy for me to just come over here, click Edit, and smash the undo button. You can't really see that, so I'll do that again. Come over here, click Edit, Click at it and smash the undo button. You can't see it gets a menu, but trust me, it's there. I don't really want to do that. Mistakes and happy accidents are a good thing. They put character into the painting. And so now I'm going to go back down to a smaller brush size for blending, and I'm just going to begin to work these in. And work them in a little bit. And I'm kind of trying to follow the striation of the actual work here. I'm not trying to have those circular motions that we had before. I'm not trying to have that vertical motion that I had before. I'm just trying to camouflage some of the actual strokes, and I'm trying to leave, while still leaving it in a very clustery kind of way, so that it maintains the illusion that's a leaf. So I may also begin to have some kind of very short kind of downward motions like this, because now we're also indicating that the branches have leaves or needles that are hanging down, which is another element that I'm looking for in the image. Again, working kind of very, letting kind of the pen do the work, applying very limited pressure, and really just beginning to let the colors and shapes appear. And by putting on that layer of that first midground layer, midground 1, and having it be very dark, that allowed me to put the lighter color on top, and it really allowed the lighter color to follow the textures of the darker layer. And that is kind of giving the eye the double-edged appearance of having the very distinct different layers. In fact, I may even go in and add some layers behind this, because to me, I'm getting a bit close to the foreground here, which is okay. Again, not one-to-one. But we're getting a bit close to the foreground here, and I do want to have the appearance of trees. So basically what we're going to do probably after this is have a layer of trees under this and kind of just see how it works and see how it does. And then from there, I will begin to actually work on the vertical elements of the trees that we see in the background of the image. So really midground of the image. And trying to, mix together the colors a little bit, just so they're a little bit less stark, and to give the illusion that these kind of colors are all interspersed, so there's no one tree that has any particular one of these, or there's no real indication of anything else going on here. It's just, these are just happy trees in the forest. They're chilling out, having a good time, and they're all intermixed, and they're all kind of aging through the season at the same rate. It is fall where I am right now, so I'm kind of taking some inspiration from that, even though the picture here was taken in just after Labor Day in the U.S., so on the Crawford Path. So it is something that is very, it was summer at the time, very dry, so the leaves were beginning to have a slight hint, but more because of how dry it was, how dry it's been in the Northeast, rather than because of the fact that we were getting into autumn. So here I'm just trying to really think about, and I am now beginning to think about form, where I had it in the past. And I am now beginning to think about where the shapes of these trees might actually be. Now I'm going to make this a little bigger, and I'm going to work to blur out this portion of it just a little bit and work this area here just a little bit because I've extended a bit too far in. Again, that's okay, but I just want to work it a bit and maintain the vertical elements that exist in this portion. And to remove the color, all I'm going is from an area where the color isn't to an area where the color is. And in that way, too, it's allowing me to blend away the mistake. Again, using the word mistake there in kind of quotation marks. And notice how if I kind of go like this, I'm adding in kind of more elements. I'm kind of almost setting this back now. If I go, oops, let's go back into that smaller brush size again. And begin to work. Now that kind of puts this area here behind the area that we were just working in. If I just kind of pull these up, it begins to kind of give that illusion of something back there. Good mid-ground one. I'm going to unlock it, and I'm going to just begin to again pull those up in a kind of vertical motion. I am going to lock mid-ground 2 though, so I don't actually inadvertently mess up our other trees. And I'm just going to begin to pull these up because now what I'm thinking is this will help us to maintain that verticality because now the eye is kind of thinking about this in a way that is, and I'm going to also steal in some of these yellows and oranges. I'm going to click on wavy brush again, small. I'm just going to in fact, I'm also going to put some Van Dyke Brown. And then back to the blender brush, and I'm going to go up. And now I've given the illusion that there is also another level of trees that are potentially taller. So now, let's have fun. I'm going to call this one mid-ground. And what I'm going to do here is take the Van Dyke Brown, and I'm going to start at a different point. Because again, I want to create the illusion that this is a downward slope. And what I'm going to do is just take the Van Dyke Brown, and instead of starting here, I'm going to start here. Go away. I'm not on the right brush. We want that brush. And again, so I'm just starting lower, and I'm just going to draw these up like so. And like so, and like so, and like so, and like so. Now, blender brush, following a similar logic, going through. In fact, before I do that, I'm going to grab some of our sap green, same thing, and just kind of pull these up like so. Some more of our orange, like so. And then some of our yellow, like so. And now I'm just going to, again, blend these. By pulling up. And as I go into mid-ground 2, it'll eliminate this kind of confusion in terms of which one's in front. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to apply other paints on top of this. And then I'm going to repeat that process, but I'm now going to pick a darker shade of brown. And I'm going to start, again, lower, and I'm going to stay in this range between these two. I'm going to start lower, and I'm going to pull up. It's okay that my strokes aren't perfect here. Again, I'm thinking a little bit darker now as I kind of go through and go like this. Because what I really want to do here is use the paint to set this further back, or further forward than the paint that we just applied. Again, the goal here is to really create the illusion of depth in the painting. Darker. Darker. Illusion of depth. Maintaining my V. And now I'm going to go and just work this in with vertical motions and vertical striations to, I don't really want detail. I don't really want something that looks specific or where you're saying, oh, that's a tree if I ever saw a tree. I just want you to think that, oh, I'm in a forest. I'm in a forest. I can see that there are different things that are off in the distance. They look kind of like trees. I can't really tell. But it looks like something that is going to be, below me, and something that's going to be a forest. And it's off in the distance. It's down, and I have to walk back down the hill to get to it. Those are really the most important elements that I want to capture. Height, verticality, and the feeling of being in a forest. And again, I kind of want there to be, I really want there to be bright and vibrant colors in the middle here, because this is where I want the eye to be drawn to. This is the hero. This little V shape here, as well as this guy on top. Those are the heroes of the painting. And notice how, because we have these three different elements here, we have this top piece, right, which is the far off, widely range. We have this other middle ground here, which is a little bit darker. Then we have other trees here, which are a little closer in, more vertical, less color. Now we're getting into more closer shapes. Now we can begin to see color peeping through. Maybe there's light shining through the valley here, and this is really beginning to pop and really beginning to shine as that central valley, and really beginning to emphasize the vertical nature of where we are in the forest. Cool. Now, locking that up, going back to midground, I'm going to now take my, let's see here, my bright colors again, and I'm going to try to undo some of the damage I did. This little symbol here only means the layer is locked, so I'm going to go ahead and unlock that. And again, apply some of this color back in here. It's okay they're intermixed, because trees aren't opaque. And by having this kind of shape here, we're basically kind of admitting to ourselves, hey, look at that. These are really close together. In fact, this kind of like is poking through, is reinforcing to the eye that it is in fact a tree it's looking at. And what I'm trying to really do is minimize the streakiness of it, and to really put a layer on top so that it doesn't necessarily seem like there is, so it doesn't seem like the leaves of this layer are being impacted by the things that are behind it. That's something that I want to minimize. In fact, I may also add in some darker shades here to kind of overwrite that. And now as I blend, because this brush is on this layer, I should get rid of some of that. Now I don't want to get rid of all of it. I still want that line, this line we're seeing here, to be there. So I need to be very careful as I'm doing this to make sure that I am maintaining the appearance of this foresty shape. I'm going to add some more of our yellow as well. Again, just trying to hit it in where the color isn't. Just kind of tapping it through. And just tapping it through. And really trying to just emphasize and put a little color on things. And I'll come through here with maybe a darker shade of green. I'll put some green in here as well. But again, I really want this area to be a darker shade because I really want this area, the painting, to seem like it's in shadow, as if the morning light has not yet caught into this part of the forest. Now, as I'm doing this, my eye is beginning to see some things. I've also been drawing on the wrong layer. Oops. It happens sometimes. It's okay. And back to our blender brush, and we just kind of go through. So I've locked the layer. There's no, I can blend on the same layer as well. This is how sometimes more digital techniques can be a little more frustrating because in the real world, this paint layer, the paint that I'd applied would have already dried. But at the same point in time, it's digital, so I can go back and manipulate things to be the way that I want them to be, which I can't do, obviously, with physical media, because once the paint is dry, the paint is dry. Having that mentality with digital art will help set you apart and will help things stand out and make it look less like it's digital. I think right now there is a lot of AI generated stuff out there, and a lot of the AI generated stuff will look very real to the photo or one-to-one to the image, as if someone went to Gemini and said, "Hey Gemini, take this image and make it a painting," right? And then to me that kind of work stands out. It doesn't really have an effect, and it's not really very artistic because you can tell very clearly of what it is and how it came to be. Whereas when you accept your mistakes, and this is where AI really fails, when you accept your mistakes, the mistakes then become part of the work, and they become part of your artistic style. And that's why it's very important to maintain those. So now I'm going to add another layer on here. I'm going to call this Bark 1. And what I'm going to begin doing is putting in vertical lines. So I'm going to take Van Dyke Brown. I'm going to take my flat Himalaya brush. This is a brush size that is yay big. I think that'll do. We'll see how it does. It might be a little big, and I want to just go through, and I want to put indications of trees that are even closer, and so I'm going to go right there. Boom. That's a decision. And I'm going to go, boom, right there. That's a decision. These kind of decisions are what's going to shape your painting. Now, I can already kind of see something here, so I think if I just go, boom, right there. That's a choice. Now, I also want to start some of these from more down here. So I want to say, boom. I want to say, boom. And closer together. Smaller. And maybe right there. And what I'm doing here is emphasizing that vertical nature of the painting, and I'm putting in what's going to be our trees. And I think I want one more. It's going to be very long. It's going to go the entire length, and it's much wider right there, bang. Now, by varying their heights like that, I've kind of given the indication. I'm going to, basically, a lot is going to be covered up by as we add on more detail. But we kind of begin to give the indication that again we are further sloping down here. This is not a flat image. It is a flat image, but we are not. We are not on flat ground. We are on the high ground. And we want to make it clear to Anakin Skywalker that we have the high ground. So what I'm going to be, I think I'm going to take and try something new. I want to try, I think, this stamps brush, and I'm going to take each of these kind of one by one, and I'm going to start with the ones that are furthest away. And again, I'm going to take sap green. No, I'm going to take. Let's see here. We're going to do this differently, and I'm going to take a color that is more. This. Let's just give this a shot. Let's try this. It's a bit too blue. I'm okay with it, so I'm okay with that. I'm going to leave this kind of bluish color on the tops here. And I'm also going to put this color where I haven't drawn in a treetop or tree bark. And that's okay, because that further enhances the idea that, oh, well, that must be so far away that I can't even really see it or differentiate it from, the top of the tree is tree bark. Or, yeah. And again, this is really standing out. I'm going to turn off and lock those other two layers before I forget. And just keep adding in this color here. And I think this more aquamarine blue will help to enhance the idea that maybe the forest is a bit wet as well. Or at the very least that the treetops are a little grayer than the bottoms. And then what I'm going to do is take this brown color, I think, and mix that in. And I'm really trying to experiment here. I'm okay with getting things wrong, or with getting shades that are a little bit off, because I can always add in more to correct it. Sometimes that can create a kind of muddy appearance. Again, I feel like that's okay. I didn't really care for that last stroke. That's okay. I'm okay with that. Moving on with life. Again, I'm just kind of going through and doing tree-like shapes. And we're going to blend a lot of this in that kind of like a jigsaw, like the old cartoons when I saw on a log. That's really the shape that I'm going to try to put the color or the blending method I'm going to use as I fill this in. The one thing I did wrong here was that I colored from light to dark. Always try to go from dark to light, because the lighter color will almost stick to darker color. Again, all I'm really doing here is trying to apply in the general shape, because I'm gonna, again, another stroke I don't really care for. That's okay. I can reemphasize that. Again, you know what? Trees aren't perfect either. Just like us, they are not all exact triangular shapes. They're gonna have imperfections. Maybe one branch grew a little further than the others, and maybe its brothers did a little better. As a result, it has a bit of a different shape to it. That's okay. And I'm really trying to focus on the top sections now either way. I'm not really too concerned about the lower branches yet because I'm going to do them in a minute. And for them, I'm going to go back to Van Dyke Brown and let's go back to our orange. I'll pick that burnt Sierra color again, burnt sienna color. I'm just trying to go through and make the trees appear a bit wider. Go back to my sap green. In fact, I'm thinking about to commit a cardinal sin. Never do what I'm about to do, but we can do it differently. Boom, it's turned off. This is the beauty of digital painting. If you truly don't like it or truly think that the experiment failed, that's okay too. And we're gonna create bark 2. Notice how I haven't completely deleted bark 1, and I still have just hidden it and locked it away, never to be seen again. But it's there in case I do change my mind and decide, you know what, that actually was a useful layer. I should go back and incorporate some of its elements. But going back here, so I'm going to also start here by reducing my size down to 60, and I'm going to focus on this side first because the path's also kind of curving down and to the right here, and I really want that to be something that's very apparent. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go choom, choom. Now I'm going to take my, let's see here, let's go with this guy. And we're going to go to something like that, 94 sounds good. And I'm going to take a darker color, because again, dark will sit on top. And I'm going to go through no, back to that brush. Just try to make this, actually, we're going to do it again. We're going to 1 by 1. This time we're not going to name the layer because it's bad luck. We're going to try again. Same brush size, but now what I'm going to do is start with a tree. We're going to say it's right here, like so. I'm now going to take my more orangey color, and instead I'm going to do a very more intentional methodology here, and a much more focused method. And now I'll kind of put that in. I'm going to take my Van Dyke Brown again, and I'm just going to go maybe smaller than that. That's probably a bit too long. I won't do that. And really just kind of begin to emphasize those more horizontal shapes you see in the tree. And again, I'm trying to be very careful with my pressure. You can see on this side how sometimes I push down a little bit too hard and it really shows. Basically what I'm going to be doing here is doing these trees in a more individual way. I didn't really want to do that because I feel like that's probably a bit overkill, so it's going to be very much in the background, but I think this tree might be something unique to the painting, so it's okay to have that extra little emphasis on it. I'm just going to a little bigger in size. And now notice how this guy is being naturally pushed in front of the other layers. It's being naturally pulled to the foreground by our eye. And now we have that blurred layer behind it is really creating that sense of this is now a different and unique tree. I'm probably also going to give each of these trees their own layer. Again, I'm just trying to follow where I think branches might be. I'm trying to move in that kind of crescent shape that I showed you earlier, and I'm really trying to go through and go ahead and add in these more crescent kind of shapes. I'm trying to kind of pull down a little bit to really give the illusion that this is a branch, and that this is a tree, and that this tree is below us. There. I'm not really going to worry about the bottom of the tree because I think that the foreground of our here is going to cut through that, so I'm okay with that. I'm now going to add a new layer. I'm going to lock in that one. I'm going to go back to my Van Dyke Brown. I'm going to make this size be about 48. I'm going to take this tree and I'm going to go right here. Okay. Now, again, I'm going to reduce my size a bit and I'm going to do something kind of very similar and just kind of go through. And that's a bit too much. And I want these branches to be almost reaching up. And I'm trying to see and kind of use the points where my hand naturally moved and curved upward and say, okay, well, those are the points where a branch would be. Because those are the points and inflection points where, for whatever reason, the sun was warmer on that given day or that given year, and that branch grew a bit differently, or that part of the trunk grew out a bit differently because it got sun that was a bit different. And I'm going to go and try a different color here as well to further make these trees stand out as things that are different now. Increase my brush size back up, and I'm just going to go through. I'm going to change this up, make this even darker. Yeah, there. And really go through this and really kind of begin to work it. And again, focusing on pulling out the branches in a way that is very vertical, very horizontal rather. And I really want to give the illusion that this is something that is tall. Yeah. And, you know, most of us have had a Christmas tree. That's kind of the visual I keep in my head when I'm painting this kind of tree. Kind of a sickly Charlie Brown-esque Christmas tree that doesn't necessarily have a complete fullness to it because, you know, in the real world, branches break off. You know, not everything is picture perfect. And capturing that in a painting adds a certain beauty to it and accuracy of the natural world and you know, cruelty of the natural world almost too, to where you can see like, and maybe a squirrel had a home in this part of the tree and it blew off in a storm, and that poor little fella it's kind of out of luck now. Now what I'm doing is adding in this kind of darker tone, and I am following the left-hand side of my tree. My idea is that the first one we drew is in direct sun. It is further out in the valley, it is open, it has sunlight. I'm going to use this other yellow color to now reinforce that this side of the tree, on the right-hand side, is maybe a little more out in the sun and a little more full as a result. So I'm going to add in some other sap green tones here as I go through and emphasize it. Then I'll add in some more darker tones to kind of help it stand back out and to kind of help to maybe add a little bit of depth as well. And again, I'm going to blend this all in a minute, so it's going to look a little better. Now, let's go back to our blender brush. Smaller in size. I'm also going to zoom in. And just work this in that kind of crescent manner to really kind of make sure that these strokes are able to stand out from the portion behind it. So with that area there, I really tried to restroke the overall shape of the branch itself because it really felt a bit weird to me. I just tried to move it around a little bit, re-emphasize it. I was trying to also add in some of these more, emphasize some of the branches a little more. Maybe there are some branches on the tree that aren't necessarily full, and so I kind of want to make that part of the painting clear as well. And I'm really just trying to emphasize, again, this is not, we're still really in the midground here. We're not really in the foreground. There's going to be stuff in front of this. And I'm just trying to make sure that this isn't necessarily blurry, that you can tell these two things apart. And I'm probably going to do this several more times as we work through and add more detail to this midground. There. Now, really fast, I'm going to turn that off, lock it, turn on, keep that guy on, lock it, unlock it rather, and do the same thing. There we go. Pull up, make it look pointy, and just work through. Actually, having that more circular motion here is kind of making this a bit better, so maybe I'll go back and do something similar on our last tree, because I really am liking the way this looks with this more circular motion. So long as I'm paying attention to where I am, which color I'm pulling, it actually looks quite good. And you can see it's mixing in the colors a bit more. Again, this kind of circular motion. And really just trying to create the shape. And so now here I am trying to really think about shape and form and what's actually going here, because now we are dealing with something that's close enough that your eye can tell what it is. and your eye knows for a fact it's a tree. So if we begin to do things that aren't very tree-like, it'll look weird. So I want to be very careful and very intentful in these shapes and forms that I'm creating to make sure that I am not inadvertently creating something that confuses the eye and makes it and kind of distracts it from the overall image as a whole and the overall composition, because instead of focusing on the bright spots, you end up kind of thinking about, well, is that really a tree? What is that? And like, it looks like it is, but that little added layer of confusion to your visual senses really takes away from the goal that I have as an artist. Pull back some of that color a bit. I'm also trying to be careful to not accidentally remove too much paint, because by blending, it'll sometimes have that kind of appearance. And I really do want to avoid that. And I really do want to make sure the tree seems relatively full. All right, because this is summer. This is not fall. Maybe it has some dryness to it, but overall, you know, it's still alive and well. It's still kicking, and it's doing its thing, making the photosynthesis and growing. And just blending, helping it look full, helping it look like a tree. Removing some of the more horizontal strokes that I had originally, and I'm also still letting the vertical element of the bark stand through. In fact, I'm going to go in and I'm going to add in some more paint here for me to grab onto. And just these little circular motions. We're now down low enough in the tree that some of what we're doing here might get covered up. That's okay. We're not spending a ton of time on it. We're just kind of working through it and going through. I'm gonna work on it for about another hour or so, and then I'll save this away for you guys to watch later on. Now, that is much fuller and much clearer than it was a minute ago. And if I turn back on the other tree, it's a night and day difference between the two. So now, I'm going to lock layer 3, but I'm going to leave it on. We're also going to call that now tree 1 and tree 2. And I'm going to zoom in some more. And again, we're going to take our blender brush, and at the top here, we're really going to emphasize that verticality of it. And then from there, we'll start to introduce those circular motions back in. But again, I'm still following the overall shape of a tree and the overall motions that I'm using. Even though it's circular, I'm still following that same pattern of a crescent, even if my stroke itself isn't necessarily crescent shaped, like a moon. And by default, I've created some really interesting things here. So this here will look like a ton of detail, and it'll seem like I worked on it for hours, when in reality, you kind of just saw me do it now, and it was relatively quick once I figured out the technique that I wanted to use for it. And you can see now how, because this is darker now, it is also doing a much better job of standing out from the layers behind it. Just blending through. And blending through. And when I come to certain branches that seem like they're kind of big, I'm trying to emphasize the length of them as well. And that's something you can see in the image, as how there are those kind of branches that are kind of sticking through. And I am trying to keep that as part of the painting overall. And here I'm trying to get some of those darker colors across again to limit the bleed or like camouflage that it has with the layers behind it, because I really want that darker color to put itself in front of the lighter color of the background that we made. And just there, what I did was really re-emphasize the vertical trunk of it as well. And I'm not worried about this being too perfect. Again, I'm just kind of wanting this to stand out as a little more defined and a little more obvious to the eye of what's looking at. I'm going to try to blend some of that brightness out there because it is a bit too bright. But having the color there also allows this to seem like it's catching a little more light than it may have otherwise. Again, I'm being mindful of where my brush is pulling from and where I'm putting it when I begin to blend, because that's going to define the color that gets spread around. If I start from a lighter color, that'll cause the lighter color to blend. And here I'm just pulling this down, and then maybe back up a little bit to clear it, and then there maybe we also go like that. So there we can also blend in the fact that maybe there's an additional shape there. So now let's zoom back out and see how this is compositionally and where it is. So now we have these two trees that are kind of off set there, and I think I want one more next to it for tonight. And we're going to go, I want to do this a little more zoomed out so I can see exactly where it is. And we're going to go here. Cool. Now, I'm going to zoom that back in. And move down a little bit. See, we have this kind of curve here. Well, you know what? That's that. It's kind of bending like this. Well, that's kind of going like that. It's kind of doing this thing here. Well, maybe it goes like that a little bit. And you see how now this tree is much more interesting than a simple straight line. All by just kind of paying attention to where my hand curved. This guy's gonna be a little bigger. That's okay. So now I'm going to also start with a very dark color here. And I'm going to apply this in a more solid way. Because I really want... that was a miss. My hand just kind of slipped there a little bit. And I really want this to... I'm just going to move this back slowly back and forth to create that appearance. So there, I like it. There, it looks good. Because now I can come over here and do this. And now I'm beginning to show how this tree is a bit different. Alright, so now maybe we're like that. And this tree is now taking a much fuller shape than we had previously. And maybe it's going like this. And I'm almost letting my hand shake as I'm doing this. I'm really kind of trying to go through and let the imperfection define the shape, right? I don't want that perfectly triangular shape. I want gaps like this V here, and that V is even then pointing in the direction I want to, which is great. You know, happy accents sometimes. And I want this to be kind of having a imperfect, naturalistic shape, almost chaotic. Because again, I want to go through in a minute here, and I want to add more color onto this. So it's okay if it's not perfect. It's also going to get blended too, so I'm very okay if it's not perfect. Now, where are we in the overall painting here? Good. Then looking at the burnt sienna, going through. Now here, I'm going to try to follow the edge. Trying to not paint in new areas like that. I really want to attach it and have it stick onto the darker shade. Let's come over here. Just fill this in a little more. It looked a little bit too barren. Back to the burnt sienna. A little more in there. A little more. And here we want to kind of make it seem like this is a bit further back into that shadow. It's further from that V line. So I want to make this really seem like it is less exposed to light, even though I want to pick a darker shade of the sienna. Now back to our blender brush and first starting up with the kind of verticality and then circular motions. And I'm just blending this in. Blending it in. And again, this is still the mid-ground. It's okay if it's not perfect. In fact, even in the foreground, it's okay if it's not perfect. And I'm just kind of scratching away at the canvas here and trying to just kind of give this a defined shape. It's okay if it's not perfect. It's okay if it's not exact. And I'm kind of liking the way it looks overall. It's a bit thinner than the other two, but that's okay. Not every tree is going to have the same thickness. And I can try to widen it out a little bit here down the bottom to make it not quite look so skinny. Occasionally even a tree has to have a cheeseburger. And really just going through and really just letting the different colors interact and letting the different colors play a little bit. Because the more the colors play, the more the colors seem to be interacting, the more work there is for your eye. Your eye is lazy. Your eye is going to try to jump to conclusions and figure something out. So the more the colors interplay and interact, and the more they become intermixed and less linear, the more guesses your eye is going to make. And I kind of want the eye to play a guessing game because that's going to be how it determines, and I trick it into thinking some globules of digital paint are actually a tree. Because it's not a tree, it's digital gobbledygook, right? Like, I didn't sit here and actually physically paint in every single pine needle that's in this pine tree. I haven't constructed it as an exact one-to-one of the image. But it's still pretty apparent that it's a tree. So I'm probably going to finish up this tree, and then I will call ourselves likely done for the evening. And again, just really trying to let this stand in front of the other two and let this really kind of seem like it is a little bit closer in there too, and a little bit further up the hillside. And again, that's going to be obscured as we put in that kind of grassy, mossy mound you see in the bottom right. We're not quite there yet. That might happen in the next one, which I'll try to do this weekend. And I'll send out a schedule for it, probably on Saturday or Sunday. Cool, so that is that. I think I'm gonna, let me just zoom out a little bit, take a look at it. And that is overall what we are looking for. There is kind of a contrast here where these seem like they're behind, so maybe we'll play around a bit. Maybe we'll actually, let's see what happens if we do this. That's not what I wanted to do. It was locked. Cool. So I'm going to do some things here. So what I'm going to do is merge that together. I'm going to merge this together. So those are now one layer. And I'm going to do this. Not quite right. And there it looks, I think, a little better. So I'm going to leave these trees in front. As we go along too, this is really going to be a background mesh. So there will be other stuff in front here to kind of make this look a little more natural. And I'll probably also put other trees on the left-hand side here, or I may not, because they're going to be obstructed behind this. So we can just leave that there with these much taller trees that are going to be in front here, define that. I'm pointing at the left-hand side if you can't see it. And we'll begin to add in, I think, this cluster on the side here next, and that'll really help to. It'll really need to use this area here as a backdrop. Yeah, let me just kind of save this file here, and I will leave us there. I hope you enjoyed this if you watched. Hopefully you watched all the way through. And if needed, hopefully this helped you kind of mellow out. That's why I do this. So hopefully I'm kind of sharing that vibe. Enjoy your evening, and I will see you this weekend or the next time you happen to watch a video. Thank you. Goodbye.